I flipped and wholesaled 54 properties in 2024, and I made money on every single deal. Here are my top 5 tips if you want to do the same thing. First, you make your money on the buy. Your profit is determined when you purchase the property. A bad buy can't be fixed even with the best renovation. For single-family homes, sales comps and appraisals will limit how high you can sell your property for. You can't sell your house for a significantly higher amount than the neighboring houses, no matter how nice of a renovation you do. For example, if standard renovated homes in your neighborhood are selling for $300,000 and you do a crazy nice HGTV remodel, you might be able to sell it for $320,000 or maybe even $340,000, but don't expect to be able to sell it for like $400,000 or something way higher than the neighboring houses. So since you can't rely on selling at a higher price, no matter how nice the renovation, to make your money, you have to make sure you purchase the property at the right price so that you make profits. So how do you know you're buying at the right price? First, when underwriting your deals, make sure you add enough cushion or contingency for when things go wrong during the renovation process. A lot of people forget to calculate holding costs and closing costs on the purchase and the sale of the property when running their numbers. The formula I use is after repair value minus the holding costs, minus the closing costs, minus the renovation costs, minus the profit I want to make will give me the maximum amount that I will offer on the property. A rule of thumb I like to use is called the 5-10 rule, and that's where I give a 5% cushion to the sales price of the property and a 10% cushion to the renovation cost of the project. For example, if renovated homes in that area are selling for $300,000, then I will underwrite my after repair value 5% lower or at $285,000. That way I'm giving myself some buffer room in case I need a price drop when I list it at $300,000, or if I do sell it at $300,000, then the extra profit is just a bonus on top. And then for the 10% rule, let's say that same home will need $70,000 of renovations. I'll actually budget for $77,000 or an extra 10% to cover unforeseen circumstances or any surprises that pop up during the renovation. Now for the closing costs, you also want to budget for the closing costs when you purchase the property and when you sell the property. So there'll be 2 sets of closing costs. I like to put 5% of the after repair value as my estimate when budgeting for closing costs. And I do that because I pay for all the closing costs when I'm buying the property to give the seller the best deal. And then when I go to sell, I know normally I will pay the title policy and certain closing costs and realtor commissions as the seller. Now for holding costs, that's going to vary based on your lender. Every lender has different interest rates and different points that they charge. So you just want to underwrite it based on the terms that your lender is giving you. Now, for profit, I don't have a set percentage for profit when I come to flips. It all depends on how much work the flip needs. Like if it's a quick 2-week light cosmetic remodel or a heavy 3-4 month full gut remodel. That's gonna affect how much profit I want out of the deal. Also, for higher priced homes, I'm going to want a larger profit margin to have more cushion in case I need to drop the price to get it sold. Now, let's walk through a quick example putting all these numbers together and to see how the formula works. If I know that a house will sell for $400,000 fully renovated, and I know it needs $70,000 of work to renovate, and let's say I want to make a $70,000 profit as well, this is what the formula would look like. So in this case, I would take out 5% of the $400,000 after repair value, and that gives me a value of $380,000. Next, for the closing costs, I'll take out 5% of the original ARV of $400,000, so that gives me $20,000. And then for my holding costs, for me, it averages around 3% of the ARV, which in this case would be $12,000. Then the renovations will be $70,000 plus my 10% cushion, so I'll underwrite it at $77,000. And lastly, the profit I want to make is $70,000. So that would be $380,000 minus $20,000 minus $12,000 minus $77,000 minus $70,000, and that gives me a maximum offer of $201,000 for the property. Now you're probably wondering, how do you find these properties at such a discount where you can make this profit and make it make sense? So the only way that I think can consistently work is doing off-market direct to seller marketing. That means reaching out directly to sellers and asking if they want to sell and negotiating with them directly. These methods include cold calling, direct mail, text message marketing, PPC, Facebook ads, etc. Now, 99% of people won't do this because it takes a lot of work and effort. You have to treat it like a real business and run it like a business, and it takes time and effort to make it work. However, the rewards are well worth it. I've had multiple deals where when I first reached out, they weren't ready to sell, and it took over a year of constant follow-up with the seller until they were ready to sell, and then when they came to me to do the transaction despite there being other investors reaching out to them, asking them to sell the property to these other investors. And that's because I built the rapport and the trust by following up consistently over the entire year, 2 years that I've been talking to the seller. And each of these deals have been massive profits, like each deal over $50,000 every time. So don't give up if a seller isn't ready to sell the first time you reach out to them. Have the perseverance and the systems in place to keep following up until they are ready, and it'll be well worth the effort. Don't be pushy. Don't try to pressure or force them to sell the property to you. Just let them know, hey, I'm here whenever you're ready. Just feel free to reach out to me. That way they know you are there with a solution, but they don't feel pressured to sell to you or pressured to make a decision. And that's what makes them feel good about making a decision on their own terms to do business with you. And follow-up also applies to the marketing, especially direct mail campaigns. Statistics have shown that the seller response rate dramatically goes up after the 4th or 5th mailing. So you might mail the seller the first time, a second time in a month, and a third time in another month, and get no response, and you might think it's dead and you might stop mailing that seller. However, if you continue and push forward on the 4th, 5th, 6th, or even 7th mailing, you'll finally get that response more often than not. And that's the key to getting these deals, is a lot of people give up way too early and they don't follow up on the marketing and nurture the seller. A lot of times sellers just aren't ready to sell without even reaching out to you, or they forget, and that constant letter or postcard in the mail will remind them, oh yes, I need to sell this property. So the follow-up is very key in marketing and in building rapport with the sellers. You'll never know when a situation in the seller's life occurs that completely changes their mind and gives them extra motivation to make them ready to sell the property. Now, my third tip is to focus on a good design and color scheme on the renovation of the property. Most flippers or rehabbers overlook this and they put out generic looking products, and that hurts the resale compared to what they could have done at a similar price point. Most flips and new builds here in Houston I see doing the same exact generic finishes. I'm talking about the light gray wall paint, the gray LVP floors, the gray fake Carrara marble look tile on the shower walls. If you're doing any of these things, just stop. It's 2025, and these things were great a decade ago in 2015, 2016, but not today. Styles change and you have to adjust to the market, especially if you're a flipper, because whatever is trending or what's hot is what's gonna sell. The type of finishes I'm seeing nowadays that do well and help homes sell quickly and for more money is white colored paint on the walls, a light oak colored flooring, whether that be real wood floors or just LVP flooring. Make sure it's a very light colored wood look, and then having wood look tiles in the bathrooms as well, or some kind of wood accents throughout the house. Also, adding accent lighting like LED strip lights, extra pendant lights, wall sconce lights, all those ancillary accessories with lighting really help elevate the space and the design of a home that can help you get more money on the sale or at least sell it quicker. And all these things I'm mentioning don't really add that much cost to your renovation. Changing the paint color is not going to change the cost. You're just choosing a different color, but it's the same price. Same goes with the flooring. And the pendant lights, adding a few extra light fixtures is really not going to cost you more than a few $100s. Yes, you can still keep doing those generic gray finishes, but expect your home to take longer to sell and sell for less money compared to homes with a more cohesive and modern design. For example, my latest new construction project, other new construction homes in the same neighborhood of the exact same size were sitting on the market for months, struggling to sell for $350,000, while my homes all sold the first day on market for $370,000. And that's because my design and my color scheme was a lot nicer than the competition, and it's things that aren't really that much more expensive. standing out from 90% of these other flippers that just put the most basic generic builder grade items in their flips will help you be a lot more successful when flipping homes. One word of caution though, if you feel like you're not good at interior design or color schemes and you're thinking about hiring an interior designer, just make sure you really vet them out and check their previous projects to make sure that you like them before you hire them. Because in my opinion, interior designers are very expensive for what you get, and a lot of them honestly just aren't even that good. And that's especially true in markets like Houston or Texas, where they're not as modern or as new of a style as, let's say, the West Coast or East Coast areas. So just be careful before dropping several $1,000s on an interior designer just to get an okay product. Of course, interior design is subjective. Everyone has different tastes, but the whole point of flipping is to design the home in a way that will appeal to the broadest audience and the most amount of people to sell your home the quickest. Now, my fourth tip is to look for wholesale suppliers to buy your materials from. It's a great way to save money on materials for your renovation, and a lot of times in your city, you'll have local wholesale supplier stores for materials such as doors, windows, cabinets, quartz countertops, flooring, etc. Make sure you take the time to drive around your city and find these stores, or another way is to ask builders and contractors that do a lot of volume where they get their materials and supplies from, because a lot of time they'll know places that are cheaper than your big box stores like Home Depot or Lowe's. Most of the times, these stores are open to the general public, but most people just don't know about them. So going there and finding your materials can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over going to a big box store. For example, for my last 5-home development project, I was getting my windows from a box store that's still cheaper than Home Depot's or Lowe's, but it's still like a nationwide box store. And after getting the quote, I was able to discover a new local wholesale window supplier. And when I got their pricing back, they were about $8,000 cheaper than the store I had been using for the windows. And it was a lot of windows. It was over 100 windows for 5 homes. So that's why the slight adjustment in pricing per window ended up being a huge savings. The same goes for interior doors, cabinets. I was able to find these areas over the course of the time I've been doing real estate, and it's really saved me thousands and thousands of dollars on each project. However, one thing to keep in mind is normally these stores don't accept returns or refunds. So you have to double check you have the right measurements and the right quantities before placing the order. That is the one benefit of those big box stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, Floor & Decor, is they do free returns and free refunds for unused items or extra material that you bought. While for these wholesale suppliers, you want to order just like a little less than what you need to be conservative and then have to buy a little more afterwards, rather than buying extra and then not being able to return it. Now, my last tip is probably the most important one when it comes to flipping houses, and that is to make sure to avoid bad locations and bad layouts. Undesirable locations and bad layouts will absolutely kill your ARV. However, if you do want to flip a home that has one of these, make sure you adjust your ARV accordingly to offset these undesirable factors. And the reason this is the most important tip is because this is the one thing that you cannot control. You cannot just pick up a house and move it, or if you have a bad layout, you can't just rip it down to the studs and redesign it, as normally it won't make sense financially. All the other things I mentioned before, you can adjust or control, which makes it not as bad of an error as this one. What I mean by undesirable location is if your home is located directly on a busy street, or it's right near a train track or railroad, or if it's located near like a power substation. All of these things are very undesirable features that people don't want when they're looking to buy their home. For bad locations like this, I will take off 10% of my ARV when underwriting the deal. So if the neighborhood has comps selling at $400,000, but my house is a house right on a main busy road, I will underwrite mine at $360,000 or $40,000 less, which is a 10% decrease in price. Now, what I consider bad layouts is poorly designed floor plans, open areas that are just kind of dead space and don't really serve a purpose, attic style lofts on like a 1.5 story home, or spiral staircases. All of those things are huge complaints to buyers and will really turn them off on the home, so you have to be able to adjust for those things. I've seen quite a few houses that have this like attic style loft area, where they kind of turned into a 1.5 story, and it's normally just like one big room, maybe 200, 300 square feet, and it's counted in the living area square feet technically, but I don't consider it real living area, and I just call it dead space. So I'll actually subtract that square footage from the home when running my comps. So if the house is 2,000 square feet, but it really has this loft-based attic area that's 300 square feet, I'll just consider the home a 1,700 square foot home and run comps off of that versus a 2,000 square foot home. And I was recently looking at homes in a neighborhood that my wife wants to move to, and a lot of them were older built homes in the 70s, and the design and the layout are so bad or inefficient on a lot of these that they're just sitting on the market and not able to be sold because no one wants these bad layouts. Buyers will worry more about these types of things because they can't control them. If they don't like a paint color or the floor or a finish or design, they can always change it to their taste in the future and remodel it themselves. But a bad location or a bad layout is something they can't change or fix and can't control, which affects your pricing more than a bad design or a bad layout. So those are my top 5 tips for flipping homes. And if you're looking to get started or get into it, please make sure you apply these tips to save yourself lots of headaches and save yourself from making errors that will cost you thousands of dollars like it did to me. I'm hoping you can learn from my experience so that you can be more successful quicker than the amount of time it took me to be successful. If you found any value or good information out of this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.